So in this short lesson, we're going to start talking about solving equations. And two things we're going to begin with are the addition principle for equations and the multiplication principle for equations. One way we can think of this is kind of an old-fashioned balance scale where if we had 3 blocks of something, in order to keep it balanced and level, we have to put the exact same on both sides. So in other words, this is just a way of saying 3 equals 3. Okay? Now the addition principle for equations says, as long as we add the same thing to both sides, we're going to remain in balance. Or in other words, our equation will remain equal. So if I add, say, 2 more blocks, as long as I add 2 more blocks to the other side, I might have different numbers now, but my equation is still true. Both sides of the equation are still equal and represent the same amount. Okay? So that's the addition principle for equations. As long as we add the same thing to both sides, then they remain in balance. And of course, if we subtract the same thing from both sides, it works as well. So if I subtract 2, then I'm still going to remain in balance. Well, this also holds for multiplication and division. So let's say I still have 3 on each side. If I multiply by 3 on this side, in other words, 3 times 3 would give me now 9 blocks. As long as I do the same thing to both sides, I'm still in balance. So if I have 3 equals 3, and then let's say I multiply both sides by 3, I still have now an equation that's true. Different numbers, now it says 9 equals 9, but it's still true. So this concept of a balance scale is going to be really important to us later on as we get into much more difficult equations. And of course this holds for division. If I divide by 3 now, 9 divide by 3, and I'm left with 3, as long as I do the same thing to the other side, I'll still be left with 3. So let me show you now an equation with a variable and how this is going to help us solve. So let's say I have some number minus 4 equals 11. Well, you might know what that number is off the top of your head, but let's say you didn't. Let's say you wanted to isolate x and get it all by itself. What property could you apply to, in a sense, get rid of this negative 4, cancel it out and make it 0, and then keep the equation by doing the same thing to both sides? Well, what you would need to do is, as we just saw, as long as you add the same thing to both sides, you're going to remain balanced. So one thing I could do is add 4 to both sides, and now a negative 4 and a positive 4 make 0. So all I'm left with is x on this side. But now over here, I also need to add 4 to remain in balance. So 11 plus 4 is 15, and I now have my answer of x equaling 15. If I were to go back and plug it in, does 15 minus 4 equal 11? Yes, it does. So we can go the other way as well. If I have x plus 3 equals 7, what number plus 3 equals 7? Well, one thing I could do is subtract 3 to get x all by itself, but then I'd have to do, to keep in balance, I'd have to do the same thing to the other side. And that gives me x equals 4. Now this holds for multiplication and division as well. So this concludes the video, but I'm going to now show a couple of examples of multiplication and division if you'd like to see that. If you feel comfortable, then this concludes the video. But now here are some examples. So let's say we have 3 times some number equals 24. Well, again, you might know this off the top of your head, but let's say you don't. What can I do? Well, I want to get x by itself, and right now it's being linked by multiplication. So just as we saw previously, if I wanted to do undue addition, I had to subtract. Well, here, if I want to undo multiplication, I need to divide. So 3 divided by 3 will just give me 1x. But in order to remain in balance, I have to do the same thing to the other side. So I have to divide by 3 over there as well. And that gets me x equals 8. Okay? So let's look at division now. Let's say I want to know what number divided by 4 equals 20. If I'm not sure what number that is, well, I can observe that what's being done with x right now is it's being divided by 4. So if I want to undo that and get just 1x or get x by itself, I have to multiply by 4. Why? Because 4 divided by 4 will just give me 1x. So I'm going to multiply by 4, and then to keep the equation in balance, I'm also going to multiply by 4 over here. So 4 and divide 4 gives me just 1x, and then over here 20 times 4 gives me 80, and that is the value of x that makes the equation true. 80 divided 4 equals 20. So that was the addition property over equations, or for equations, along with its partner subtraction, and now the multiplication property for equations along with its partner division. So now this officially concludes this video.